but for now we have another speakers in our room already, and please turn on your camera, and we are going to the next topic. The next topic is about the future of the central bank digital currency, CBDC, and Fiat post COVID-19. We have here Rico. Where are you?
Well, I think Andy's up. If we're going to the next section.
Yes, but to be frank, I'm looking for Rico first.
Gordon, then I'll put myself on pause.
My pleasure. Yes, you're being on the next section. Guys, I'm waiting for you. Rico Pang, Gabriela Mad, and Dunstan Teo. Gabriel, you're already here?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Gordon, what's up? What's interesting on your side happening till Rico comes back? Yes, maybe just a couple of words about CBDC sector, how it looks like in the United States.
Okay, hold on. I'm wrangling I'm wrangling Massimo. What does it look like? Well, it looks like it's not happening anytime soon in the United States. Central bank digital currencies. Maybe it should happen, but you have the incumbent advantage and disadvantage, of course, with the United States, which is traditionally recently it's been the primary reserve currency and sort of the default currency. There's a lot of reasons for that. None of them are related to information replacing oil or this new world we're heading into. So I can see the U.S. moving slow in this direction. They're making noises about experimenting with it, but I haven't seen any kind of substantial move. I'd be impressed if they did.
They made a fairly substantial move, I think, last week. I wouldn't call it substantial, actually.
You read that?
With the BIS, where they joined a working group to start looking at the foundations and basic principles of CBDC, and the Fed is part of that. It's made up of, I think, 6 central banks or monetary authorities. The working paper was released by the Bank of International Settlements maybe 4 days ago. So it's fairly recent, but the Fed surely is taking this industry a little bit more seriously now, specifically in the last month. As you said, they've been a little bit vocal about the experimentations, but in terms of looking at the solutions on the market, joining the working groups, hosting private seminars, they're definitely up there and getting geared up to be ready.
So how much of that do you think is PR and optics, and how much do you think of that is a heartfelt desire to embrace this world when it comes to the US dollar?
I think it's actually less on the PR and optics, and they probably want to say less on it than anything else. I would even postulate that the Fed has been looking at researching and experimenting with CBDC for several years, but in understanding it responsibly before they undermine their own monetary position. So I think what's coming out right now is rather a forced PR, as opposed to one to try to create hype for themselves. They absolutely, I think, and I'm assuming here that they wish to avoid that level of attention, but the market is not giving them the opportunity to do so with the People's Bank of China, Libra, the Bank of International Settlements, the global movement on central bank digital currencies, the work that we're doing with central banks in various parts of the world, which means that CBDC is coming in one form or fashion, and it's going to touch their doorstep. And then I think the other aspects of it is the growth that we saw with stablecoins and the fact that there's already kind of a quasi US digital dollar with an M2 underpinning, and Tether and Gemini and Coinbase and all these other stable coins. So I think that forced
Gabriel, I actually don't know you, and this is an interesting little meme jam going on here. So happy to meet you.
Sorry. I apologize.
But just for me and the newly joined. So the work you're doing that's related to CBDC is?
I founded a company in 2013 called Bit.com. Bit.com went on to invent, we invented the first digital ledger technology-based CBDC. We went on to secure
central bank?
Well, at the time of when we did it, it was with the governor of the Central Bank of Barbados, where I'm from, the island of Barbados. We then was not constituted as a legal tender because it was a wait and see kind of experiment from the governor's end. But by 2018, the industry obviously started picking up. The education was done around the world. By that time, we had secured the first MOU with a central bank globally, and that would be the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. And by 2019, a contract. And they have 8 sovereign countries under a single currency union. And currently today, we're working with several other central banks around the world.
That's great. And has any working with, as opposed to just communication with the U.S. Federal Reserve or any U.S. government agency?
I'm not privy to discuss that, but what I can say is that the U.S. government is paying attention, and they're very aware of what's happening in this industry, and they're by no means keeping their head buried in the sand.
Well, that's pleasant to hear, and I acknowledge that you're
I'm not speaking
right
from
near
a
the
position.
sun, so that's great.
I'm not speaking from an official or knowledged position.
Right, but your aesthetic impression, let's say, is that, well, because my vector on the U.S. regulations is mostly in the area of securities and money transmitter, and it has been begrudging at best. And I see a lot of sort of optical positioning, but when you get down to nitty gritty and actually read the documents, they're in essence restating law or even taking a more hardline position than you have in law.
And that's why we typically typically see in emerging technologies, micro states or small island developing states or small nations pivot and take up these technologies first. It's mainly for the single reason.
Well, okay, so I'm going to be intentionally ironic. Small countries like China.
No, China wasn't the first to do this. China,
but it was pretty early.
Well, they were early, but the first to do this were in the Caribbean territories: Barbados, the Eastern Caribbean, Bahamas, Project Sandal or Project Dcash, Project M-Money. These were done years in advance of PBOC's announcements, or months in some cases. And the point is that small boats can turn fast. And the People's Bank of China has indicated that they have been researching privately CBDCs since 2014 and probably earlier, while they only came out publicly in 2019. There were smaller territories that came out way before that.
Guys, finally we have Rico Pang on stage. Rico, this is your session. You are going to moderate. Yes, the stage is yours. I'm looking for Dunstan as well.
Look, I take over Rico's positions. He takes over mine. We're just interchangeable. So, hey, Rico.
Hey, I got it. Sorry for the delay, guys. I think Dunstan is trying to join the new link now. Yeah, I think thanks for hosting us today again, Sergey. Good to see you again. And thanks for joining us, Gabriel. I think thanks for starting it up as well, Gordon. I think you guys had a good start about China on CBDC. Gabriel, I know that you have been involved in quite a number of deals on CBDC, and you have a lot of experiences compared to many people in the space. You know a lot of things in the space about CBDC. Feel free to tell us your experience and what are the biggest challenges and opportunity in CBDC.
The experience was, we cut the path, right? And so the experience was that of a pioneering organization, or the first crazy few. And so my experience is comes from a position of understanding the resistance over the years, the lacking education, the myths, the misconceptions of what CBDC was and what it wasn't, what it represented, the benefits, and the possible risks and how to mitigate those. And the position that we grew up in this industry was one of having to define those with dozens of central banks over the years to get to the point where we now have this industry today, where it's more accepting. The barriers to acceptance are significantly reduced. Central banks are now well educated on the topic of CBDC. Blockchain is no longer the monster in the closet. The benefits and the reality of what it can actually do to an ecosystem or to a monetary authority is now evident. And I think at this stage, the resistance is actually nearly completely eliminated, which is quite amazing, and quite amazing transition to see over the last 6 or 7 years. And currently what we are seeing is almost every single central banker looking at this technology for one aspect or the other, whether it's for a wholesale settlement, a retail settlement. They're looking at it from a remittance solution. They're looking at it from a financial inclusion, creating a more democratic payment system. Whatever the reason, there is something that blockchain checks off in those various categories. And it's undoubtedly become the superior solution for a monetary authority's future endeavors of wanting to enact their ability to create a more trustworthy environment, a more stable economy, and allow the dollar to actually retain its sovereignty within its nation. And blockchain helps central banks do that, and they're now realizing that. So it's, what am I seeing? I'm seeing a rapidly evolving and a ever-growing field that it's now on its way to its S-curve hockey stick growth, where we saw from 2013 stability, a straight line that was almost dead. 2014, 15, 16, 17, you started a bubble. Now we're like this, where it's parabolic at this stage. And I'm very excited because there's dozens of CBDC projects happening independently, and at the same time, dozens of initiatives happening collaboratively.
Rico, can I just jump in here? Because Juliet said I can stay on with you and just enjoy.
No, you shouldn't. We
I
cut
shouldn't?
off. Like, I know you're gonna do this. That's why I asked specifically you should do your session, and we should do ours. Otherwise, this is
I'll be quiet. Never mind. Rico, go ahead.
Just kidding, man. Go for it.
No, Gabriel's interesting. So I like this. This is cool. So okay, you're from Barbados?
I am born and raised on the island of Barbados. Yes, I
Got
currently
it.
live in the United Arab Emirates, however.
Okay, because we're gonna have Arena on shortly, and she's in Dubai, I believe, also. And I was gonna ask her about the status
Arena
of,
Heaver?
Yes.
Oh, that's my good friend.
Well, she should be on now. I'll try to get her. We should just merge all this. Sorry, Rico.
Oh, you're about to make a very spicy conversation. I don't know if I have that type of energy this morning.
You know what? That's the wrong crowd to say this to. And sorry. And I got my matcha. My wife got me matcha. So, you have to have high energy. You said a couple of interesting things there. I mean, are the upward or positive facets of blockchain and the rest of this? It sounded to me like you were saying generic benefits that could apply to payment. Can they exist separately from a central bank digital currency just by payment providers innovating aggressively enough? Or do we need them in the CBDC lane?
Yes and no. So if we're talking about that, we want to split into two categories, because that's basically where you're going. You're going to the category of privately issued money or private institution money, such as JP Coin, Libra, Coinbase, USD, etc. That's fine and well, and really and truly one of the main differences that changes is the operator. In one instance, you have the operator as a private organization that's for profit, and their endeavors have an agenda-driven objection, whereas the central bank is not a for-profit institution. It has a completely different agenda, and the goals and objectives usually aren't aligned with the private and the public organization in terms of what they're trying to do for their society or for their offering. Now, what I mean by saying all of that is, in one instance, you have a private e-money solution, and that is where a private company can dictate who, when, and where access can be held against such a regulatory gateway. Whereas with a central bank or a monetary authority, this is the elected public official and the regulator that is appointed by the people or by the government who are appointed by the people in some instances, or by a government
You
to
can see my
mandate
expressions, right?
yes, of course, or by a government to mandate the fiscal policies of a country. And that is not usually a profit-driven agenda. Their agenda is usually trust and stability. And a big part of a CBDC is being able to open a democratic public money system, one that is not based on profit and one that's based on uniformity, that every actor under that can get a fair participation within. And that
I
is
gotta say something. There's something very Freudian going on with everyone's backgrounds, because we got Rico, the Avengers. We got Tio. I don't know what the hell this is, but it looks like Game of Thrones on exploding. And Gabriel, Gabriel, which is obviously an angel's name. You have angel wings behind you, and your sweater matches. What, are you trying to just make yourself more credible?
That was not.
That wasn't planned. Sure.
I promise you, it was not that.
That was planned. The sweater matching the angels and Gabriel. No coincidence.
Let me try to find
Tio, what's your background?
Well, it's kind of the Sith Lord from Star Wars, actually.
The only one who looks normal is Elizabeth.
By the way, guys, Dunstan just joined late because of the technical difficulties we had. So Dunstan, a brief introduction about Dunstan. He has been involved in the Bitcoin space for about 11 years, one of the OGs in the space. I always tell people that, my friend here lost 5,000 Bitcoins in the Mountain Gox hack. Yeah. And
that's funny.
And they're getting it back this month. Apparently, most of your OGs.
A portion of it. Not
portion,
all.
Yes.
A very small portion. The rest went to lawyers and friends of legal teams.
That's what they say on paper, right? Yeah. Let's wonder how much is it that they went to that. Anyway,
I'm getting only like since we are on TV, right? I'm getting only one bag, so that's it.
Yes, on TV. Okay, pause.
But Dunstan has been involved in quite a few sovereign coins. I think some of them has morphed into CBDC structure now. So welcome to the session, Dunstan. And we started early on for about 10-15 minutes now, almost 20 minutes. But feel free to hop in. Dunstan.
Well, actually, Rico, can you talk about that? How did the project you work on evolve into a CBDC?
Okay, CBDC.
I wanted to go into. Let Dunstan go to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, CBDCs were evolution of sovereign coins. The first sovereign coin the first reported sovereign coin in the world was the SOV, but the real first sovereign coin in the world is actually done by Russia. Although later on people call it the crypto ruble and so on, but actually that's just that's just a fake name and whatever that's going on. So so that's the first sovereign coin. Of course, obviously the second country would that tried to do it would be the SOV. But what happened was the US actually forced the Pacific Islands to stop the SOV project.
The Marshall Islands, right?
Yeah, the Marshall Islands. They stopped.
Yeah, I remember that. We were rolling out Barbados's Zen money at that time. And I remember when that happened, we were wondering if that would start happening to us as well. That was the number one question investors had, is would we be shut down by the US for doing this?
Okay, well, now I got to ask, what's different that you did not shut down, the Marshall Islands did shut down?
We were working directly with the central bank, and our network is owned by the central bank. Our objective was to just be a software as a service organization, and we wouldn't have been in control of the network. And I understand at the time that was a variant in what the SOV was offering. I don't remember exactly what, but there was a fundamental difference in the fact that in one instance it was a private initiative, in the other instance it was the central bank leading the initiative.
Yeah, so for the SOV, right, it started off as a private initiative, obviously with a bit of the Marshall Islands legislations coming in and so on, but because they were a small, I mean, in terms of the regulators and in terms of the governments, right? They are small government and they are under the purview of the United States government in a sense. Well, or should I say, they don't want to be sanctioned by the United States. So pretty much the whole project was put on hold, although tech actually went on. The tech contract was actually given to Bangkok to develop.
Angkor, are they around still?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, they are.
yeah,
They just
Yeah.
launched a very cool debt.
I'm
Yeah,
playing.
that's it.
I'm
in the
simulating.
Dubai.
I'm simulating being a hater, but I'm not a hater.
Yeah,
Okay,
so,
I
well,
believe everything.
well,
I believe Tether's backed by $1 per tether. I believe everything. Please go on.
Yep, definitely.
Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself.
No, guys, that suicide was terrible. Anyways, yeah. Please go on. Okay, so well, let me, Gabriel, let me drill on something you said before Rico kills me and cuts my mic. I'm having this discussion a lot just from a legal perspective. The differentiation between someone who publishes software that may or may not be used for a legitimate or illegitimate purpose versus the one engaging in activity. I'm seeing that again and again with standing up blockchain networks. I'm seeing that with money services businesses and the software that goes to them. I think I'm now hearing from you, and I'm not surprised to hear it. That was the first time I've heard it. That what kind of differentiates you is you're a platform provider. You're not the platform. But I guess I'm surprised to hear the Marshall Islands was giving up the whole platform. What am I missing? What am I not understanding?
Changed. So let's quickly touch on that. So when we meet with a central bank and help go through the ins and outs of. Let me start over. When anyone meets with a central bank and understands their ins and outs, the central bank ultimately has to make a selection on the network that they're going to function on, whether it's permissioned or permissionless, centralized, decentralized, Ethereum, Algorand. It really is up to the central bank based on their requirements and up to the education that they've been given and the direction they've been pointed at. Combining all of those things, a company like Bit would typically come in and provide all of the frameworking on top of that network. So in some cases, like Marshall Islands, I believe Algorand is the blockchain being used, whereas in the Eastern Caribbean territory, Hyperledger is used in that case. So it really varies from central bank to central bank, and the vendor is expected to be able to provide a solution that is adequate to the needs of that monetary authority.
So what happened in the Marshall Islands is?
Well, their project ended up getting back on path, and it's now very successful from what I understand, with a very prominent and experienced team behind it.
Algorand, yeah.
Yeah, Algorand, they're amazing.
That would do it. Okay. Interesting. Must a central bank digital currency have a blockchain to be a true CBDC?
No, a central bank digital currency can exist on an Oracle database. The question is that wise? Is that wise to use a centralized database that's subject to muting, that's subject to forge, editing, amending,
Sorry,
tampering?
it's interesting. When you said muting, I was like struggling. Does he mean muting like censoring, or does he mean muting like mutation, like change?
Muting like censoring, as in the ability to edit, forge, or manipulate data. The ability, then interoperability, then going against the trend of the open source network. If you look at, for example, Central Bank of Ukraine, they went and used a private variant of Stellar blockchain. They forked it.
Let me interrupt 1 second. We're having Pavel Kravchenko on next. So from Distributed, I think played a role in there. He's Mr. Stellar. So go ahead. Interesting.
Well, they used a private version of Stellar, and there was many regrets because you can't keep up with the open source, not from Stellar itself, but because Stellar's open source community was advancing so much further than this forked private version that the central bank intended to run. So my point in case is that just makes more sense to work with the trend where you have millions of scientists, mathematicians, cryptographers, and developers building against these math-driven protocols, as opposed to trying to build against a private, inferior environment.
So let me pause 1 second. Irina's here. So Irina, we were saying nice things about you. Gabriel, when he heard that you were coming on next, said you're his best buddy and that you're the kind of person he argues with. So I'm glad he came in a little bit before calendar. For everyone, I guess we're just doing one big mashup.
So I think we're rushing on the session, Gordon, as we discussed last time.
Oh well.
Hi, Irina.
I'll mute myself anytime.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Irina.
Long time no see you. When are you all coming back to Dubai?
Be there in a month or two. Yeah, see, everyone's coming back in a month or two.
Fabulous.
How's it been out there in the desert without all your friends?
I have no idea. I just came back from Switzerland myself, so I'm waiting for you all to come back.
Where were you in Switzerland?
It's several places. Switzerland is tiny.
No, my wife and son are there right now. Anyways, never mind Digital Week. We're just going to talk about our personal lives.
Oh, sorry. Hi, everyone.
Good.
Everyone here from sunny Dubai, and delighted to be joining all of you to speak about CBDCs, which I think is the worst idea ever. But
wow,
go. Okay, yes.
Wow.
Lay down.
Okay.
Why is it the worst idea ever?
Well, where do we start from? Personal liberties, personal freedoms, how are we going to be, monitored even more than we are currently being monitored? Think about, this dystopian Black
So
Mirror.
you're talking about George Orwell, 1984, and the worst
I'm talking about Black Mirror. We don't need to go that far. We're talking about, the Black Mirror, your social credit. But if we're talking
she's talking mainly about the book that I wrote, actually, the Bitcoin Dystopia. So yeah.
Can you drop a link to that in the chat, and I will buy it right now and put it on Facebook?
It's not Amazon. Yeah, just Google it.
We are talking about retail
let's touch,
right? We're talking about retail CBDCs.
Retail or wholesale,
Yes.
It need not matter. I think what we're discounting here is, I will start off with one thing that I think is critical in this conversation. It's that, to your point, Irina, it does have merit. Unfortunately, it really does have merit. And CBDC can become a tool to oppress and to censor and to keep certain classes of persons outside of the monetary fold. However, the caveat that I would say is by starting off and saying that cash is king for a reason. And there's a reason that I don't ever see a future without cash. And because of that, I'll take it on to the next point. Now, it does not mean that CBDC
Sorry, Gabriel, I got to challenge you. Aren't governments actively trying to go against cash? And aren't they the ones that come up with cash?
Actually,
they are,
want cash.
Some do, some don't. Some see it as really bad for the informal economy. Some see it as forcing an informal economy. Some see it being used for money laundering and terrorism financing. Others see it as critical for keeping financial inclusion in place. Now, I see it as an imperative tool for the lack of oppression. I see it as a tool for ensuring that any and everybody, regardless of class, creed, or race, can participate in a financial system.
Wait, I happen to agree with you, but I'm not sure every government does. So that's
and this is to my next point.
Good, and saying it will actually last are two separate statements.
To my next point, the same thing that I said about cash can exist within a CBDC. If you have an honest democratic government who's looking out for the interest of their society, it's within that government or regulator's best interest to ensure that privacy is paramount in the design of these digital currencies, that access is paramount in the design of these digital currencies. In the context of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, I'm aware that they're endeavoring to create one-tiered systems so that persons can directly access central bank digital currencies both online and directly without having to go through a financial institution, thus maintaining an open accessibility akin to that of cash. So you may have a central bank who may want to use this tool to oppress their people. You may have a monetary authority or a government who can use this to monitor to the greatest degree of seeing when Auntie Jane bought a bottle of milk from Mike's corner shop. You have that level of visibility that can be used for good or bad. And it's not our job to act as a responsible government or a regulator to enact the will of what a people want. It's our job to build systems that have these inherent features that enhance the lifestyle of people. If a government uses it for ill purposes, our second job is to vote them out. I can't speak any further.
And when there's not a vote, or when people don't know,
and when there's not a vote, hope to God that your leader is one that treats the people good and that looks out for the people. If you look at somewhere like the United Arab Emirates, they treat their people great. They have a society set up where it's a structure that they're consistently evolving their offering. The UAE is one of the leading countries in the world where blockchain is being deployed across the body of governance with an effort of creating a more efficient solution, which ultimately benefits the people. So if we look at it from that context,
but you got big China, which is not a small country, with their social credit thing, and I want to go there and I want to do business, so I can't talk too much.
That's a conversation that then looks at the Black Mirror aspect that Irina was pointing out, the monitoring.
6 billion people live under non-democratic regimes. 6 billion people. And those people from democratic countries, my home country, Australia, look what they're doing now in Victoria. This is ridiculous. I want to burn my passport.
Tell us.
No, let's talk about those. Let's take on those 6 billion people.
Do they have a bank account yet? And 1.7 billion people doesn't have a bank account yet in this world.
But even more important than that, those central banks that have those 6 billion people under them do not have sovereign tools to allow them to enter into new types of financial arrangements. A CBDC can enable a central bank in a developing nation to now start entering trade block agreements, such as bilateral currency swaps, which I keep harping on about, because these types of simple economic agreements don't just empower citizens, Irina, they empower the central banks to start having new types of offerings that inherently allow them to become more free, more independent, and give more tools to their citizens. And a lot of the times you say that they're non-democratic, but I would say this, a CBDC is more democratic than a siloed currency system. A CBDC is a closer bridge to a currency of the people like Bitcoin than a closed loop system. A CBDC provides an open, more accessible solution to allow people to join a global financial ecosystem. So no matter which way we chop it, a CBDC moves us closer in the direction of being a tool that empowers persons. I can't see it any other way.
It can do all that, but it also can exercise unprecedented amounts of control and surveillance.
And now we have
micromanagement and lack of anonymity.
And great. And now
it's a great tool in many directions, isn't it?
And now we also have a tool to not just allow them to monitor us downward, but if it's a true CBDC following the standards of a consensus-driven protocol, whether it's privately federated or openly federated, proof of work, proof of stake, whatever federation you go with, the idea is that there's a ledger that is keeping a record of that oppression as well. And that ledger.
Now, I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask everyone a loaded question. Are central bank digital currencies the death of fractional reserve banking, or unrelated, or something else?
I think it's just going to take it to the next level, right? It's getting easy. It's already super easy to press, zeros and ones on your keyboard. That's just going to take it to the next level. Where do you? Fiat currencies have no bottom, and this is just a digital representation of fiat currency.
I would have to fundamentally disagree with that. and say that this is a tool that can both enhance fractional reserve banking, specifically in the fact that a true CBDC should sit at M0 and M1, where fractional reserve banking sits in M2, M3, and broad money, whereas CBDC should truly sit in narrow money to replace coinage and notes and banknotes in society. Now, I would say that if you replace an inefficient tool as a banknote with one as highly movable and has the velocity potential of a digital currency, then you're in essence creating the impression of a higher circulation in society. And you're also creating a more useful form of currency, which will have a bigger replacement in how the payment banking ecosystem works. Furthering that, as commercial banks, who are truly the money printers in society, aim to create more money through fractional reserve banking, you will now have an almost pure and transparent way of tracking those those commercial entities in society as they inflate the monetary supply. And this can bring about a more responsible form of banking, as consumers get to choose who they wish to bank with based on the leverage and the risks that are exposed through their own monetary expansion solutions. And that's one of the key things about CBDC: transparency, a ledger based on immutability that we all get to see. And if we don't all get to see it, monetary authorities and regulators do.
Let me jump in 1 second. Sorry, just real quick. I want to give a shout out to Pavel, who's also a co-panelist who joined us early. So, and by the way, Juliet signs off on this, Rico. So, but she says you're in charge. So there you go. And also Johnny Fry and Massimo will be joining us shortly. They're part of the general big picture.
We'll introduce them when they join us later.
But I wanted to not just have Pavel sit there in silent stealth mode.
Yeah.
So
Pavel,
he's very shy.
Pavel, don't be shy. I mean, tell us something about yourself and what do you think of the CBDC and regulations around it now?
Yeah, I'm a cryptographer. I've been working in this field for 17 years, in blockchain since 2014, starting from Stellar. Now working on, quite a lot of projects all over the world. We've been involved in CBDC project in Ukraine. It's kind of funny.
Also,
because only strong countries can basically do that for now. Those who are not strong, for them it might be devastating for like weak economies. And
to issue a CBDC?
No, okay, now Gabriel, I got to do this death match. Pavel, Gabriel, you're talking Barbados and quote unquote smaller countries. So tell Pavel what you're doing.
It's maybe good for people, but bad for the country, for the government. So these experiments are quite. I've been in a few meetings with head of central bank and other bankers, and the style of discussion and the questions that arise. That's definitely not it might not end good for the country, but for the China amazing. And actually I know many people who will use Chinese yuan, and it will be great for them personally or for businesses. For third world war countries, these again will be a lot of problems. And actually I can this point of view is like internet. It's like countries that had very little freedom of speech and a lot of issues with internal communications. They actually failed. They the revolutions, etc., etc. The government cannot hold the society when it gets new tools. So as internet was this tool, and it powered a lot of revolutions across the world, including US and Ukraine and Belarus, and we see many to come. So this CBDC will open the Pandora box as well. So again, for people, eventually it will be very good. For strong countries, it's a tool to control, and for smaller countries, yeah, that might be.
I actually see CBDC more applicable to developing nations, and I would remind the audience that the first pioneers of CBDC were in fact third world nations, the first to adopt, the first to research, the first to contract, the first to deploy current pilots.
Yeah, but who cares? Like,
I care.
Like, will I use the
I care,
Barbados? You do, might not.
I care, and 2/3 of the world care. And because let's get on to that topic actually, because if we're going to talk about who cares, let's talk about the fact that 2/3 of the world's developing nations, that a lot of persons beyond those constructs would scoff at and usually not look at from a financial construct position, usually leads to inefficient and very unfair banking regimes. So if I drew the context of the Caribbean region, a region where someone doesn't care about, but yet that region is still home to tens of millions of persons. Now that region also faces a very big.
Should talk business or talk about something else.
So that region faces the de-risking fiasco where they lose correspondent banking relationships. That region also faces the issue of where they are dependent on hard currencies, even though they have an interregional trade arrangement. So 100% of interregional Caribbean trade is settled with hard currencies. Now, in addition to that, financial inclusion, more than 50% of adults in these developing nations do not have access to banking facilities. That means that a large part of the world, aka billions of people, do not have access to fair financial systems. So I care about those people, and I care about that because there's also billions of people that do care. So let's keep talking about the points of why a CBDC matters to a micronation or a small island developing nation, because it provides them with financial sovereignty. It provides them with multilateral trade agreements. It provides them with the ability to have alternative financial bridges. It provides them with the ability to give their citizens financial inclusion. It provides them to have lower costs of remittances. It allows them to have better GDP because they have a better financial construct. So that's who cares.
Pavel?
I have a question. One question to all these arguments. Who prevented them, these small countries, third world countries, from building just one digital bank that these unbanked people would use? You're taking like CBDC.
Who stopped them? Thing. The people who keep branding them as developing nations. The nations that keep differentiating between first and third world. It's those people who set up those constructs. And those constructs right now can be eliminated.
GDP. I live in third world country. I live in that country myself. And I'm branded just by GDP, and I know what it means. And we are not talking about social justice or whatever. We're talking business.
It has nothing to do with social justice. Business, purely business. And from an economic perspective.
I do want to hear Pavel's response, though.
These developing nations can grossly benefit. They benefit the most of all nations from a central bank digital currency because of the level of sovereignty and financial capacity that it brings them.
Gabriel,
that is a fact.
I'm not arguing. We are on record. I told you that people will benefit from CBDC, but the governments of these third world countries will not.
And that is
they
wrong.
Will be. We'll see. That's history will tell us. It's like with internet. I made this look at many post-Soviet Union countries. Internet was not great for dictators or like people who were stuck in the past. Internet broke everything for them, and it will break more countries in the next 10 years. More countries, and the same thing will happen with CBDC. That as soon as Chinese CBDC arrives, nobody will care about like any third world war. Word.
You keep on saying that like you want it.
Yeah, I read a book just about oil. And actually, if I have a choice to use dollar or choose whatever country coin, I will not use their coin. I will use dollar or euro or yuan or something. It's not just me, it's just the businessman will do that. So for people, it will be definitely a good thing. Definitely. It's like Ukraine. We launched amazing digital banking in 1999. And people use it for what? To avoid taxes. It's a great tool. Great tool. Everybody has a card. The penetration is very big. And actually, believe me, in the US, digital banking is shit. It's like in France, it's shit. It's in developed countries, it's shit. But
Thanks.
actually, who benefits? The benefit, the entrepreneur who avoiding, using digital to avoid. But for the country, I mean, there will be a revolution in certain sense, as with internet. So I'm not saying that it's bad for people. I'm saying that if you try to approach the small countries with CBDC idea, they will tell you yes, 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 and then they'll say no, 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 and that's it. So that's what I've experienced.
Guys, now let me interrupt 1 second. I want to interrupt 1 second. Massimo is also a panelist. Massimo, can
we see you, Massimo?
Yes. Hear me?
Hi, Massimo.
Massimo, you have a great title that I don't want to mess up. So please give us your title.
I'm a United Nations global expert for Alliance of Civilizations.
You guys get all that?
And the funny thing is, Gabriel is not part of our panel, but he's like the most passionate on our panel.
Well, no, we're mixing and matching panels. This is the panel. This is the main panel of the whole show. Yeah. Okay. Rico and I are on fire. Yeah. So, Massimo, give your perspective on central bank digital currencies, and are they potentially for the benefit of the governments involved, the citizenry, the residents, or how do you see it playing out on the whole?
Well, I would make strong statements about that. What I would say is that CBDCs are better for consumers, are better for governments, are better for everybody, maybe not so much for banks, for the banking sector. Now, when we talk about financial inclusion, we have to be very careful what we mean by that, because financial inclusion ideally means that is the benefit for the normal people, but in fact, you have to see to which extent that that implies a real benefit for the people, because there must be an interest from the government to implement the financial inclusion for the people. Most of the times, governments are expression by the vote of some parties or some sort of groups of the population that have a higher voting power than others. And unfortunately, when we talk about financial inclusion, that doesn't imply that the lowest part of the population, lowest income people are benefited by that. And that is why CBDCs would be a great benefit for the people, as long as there is a benefit for consumers as well.
Thank you, Massimo. I think I understand where the debate was just now. I think the structure of the CBDC is so crucial in the direction it's heading. And I have a question actually, because while listening to the debate, I have a very interesting question for Dunstan. If Satoshi Nakamoto is around in this room, when he created the Bitcoin, what was his plan for CBDC actually? What do you think, Dunstan?
I don't believe that he would actually hope that a CBDC exists actually, because that's what Bitcoin and that's what the original cryptocurrency mindset was about. Because at the end of the day, right, it was not supposed to have any level of controls, but it's more free market structures in this place. So when CBDCs come about, I mean, I see what Gabriel is saying. I see what Irina is saying. I see what Gordon is saying, Massimo and Pavel. But what will eventually happen? The first part of what will happen is CBDCs, no matter what, will be used as a surveillance tool. is a definite yes. The Chinese, it's not just the Chinese CBDC, the Russian one, if America comes out with one, anything that has blockchain tech will generally possibly be used for surveillance, because it's a double-edged sword. But however, has the populace start evolving in understanding of monetary systems? Has they start understanding their own, because right, our financial privacy, right, is the last privacy an individual actually have. Our lives are no longer private in any sense.
Just let me tell you
yeah.
that CBDCs do not really and always require blockchain.
I understand.
That is why, for instance, in China, they are not using blockchain. They will be using blockchain, but they are not right now. So that doesn't necessarily mean intrusion of privacy.
I understand. So this is what I'm saying, you see, because at the end of the day, right, the final evolution of CBDC would definitely be using a certain level of blockchain tech, no matter what. Now, most CBDCs are in testing phase. So technically, they want to see the fluidity. They want to reduce the friction flow and so on. They would not be using. It is not technically a possibility to be using any of the major blockchains out there, any fork of these blockchains in a very fluid environment where there are massive microtransactions done by, well, if we take a look at China, it's done by like billions of people, and like with like just every one of them doing one transaction a second, right? No blockchain out there will be able to handle the strain of what's going on. So, which is why
by the time they roll
blockchain.
out, wouldn't they be able to? I mean, we're talking about, this is 2020. By the time these go live, when do you think that's going to be?
It's not about them going live. They can actually go live right now with their current system without blockchain. But what I'm saying is,
right, but they're not going to go live right now. By the time they actually do go live, isn't it possible that the various platforms will have caught up in terms of their execution speed, or that they'll be built up in anticipation of hosting a CBDC?
So that is why I say the final evolution of a CBDC definitely needs a blockchain tech. I mean, most of the countries understand that, and the reason why, obviously, Gabriel has already said. But what I'm trying to say now is, based on architecture and based on blockchain protocols right now, at our current level, or even I give us another 5 years down the road, right? Architecturally, we have not solved the friction of blockchain. We have resolved every other part of why blockchain is good, but just not the liquid friction of the blockchain itself. None of the blockchain, including every one of those out there, right, has the ability to scale to let billions of people in 1 second transact.
I'm sorry, let me stop, guys, 1 second. Sergey, if you can let in Johnny Fry, he's our other panelist. He says he's on hold. He's waiting. He's been trying to get in for a while. So if you can let him in, that'd be great.
Hey guys, I have to unfortunately jump off. I think we've gone a bit over than the panel that I was subscribed to. But
Gabriel, you cannot jump off. You are the okay.
Well, I just wanted to Pavel's. No, like where he's saying. I think I just want to get back to that really quick on the topic. Hi, Johnny. I want to get back to the topic really quickly where Pavel was saying that the 2/3 of the world's currencies won't matter because currencies like the People's Bank of China's digital currency and the US dollar will eventually consume and swallow them, and they won't matter. And it's the worst thing in the world because CBDCs exist for them. Now, I've put forward a case on why I don't agree with that, but on that same level of logic, I thought, and I know you posed a question to about would Satoshi have luck towards a CBDC, and the answer is probably not. But the truth is, the system needed a transition. And when I went towards building out the first CBDC in 2014 and 15, the absolute intentions were to build a bridge between the Bitcoin ecosystem and the fiat ecosystem. And I end that to say that I think it's quite critical in that if we want to talk about a future where sovereign currencies won't matter and the only currencies that will matter are the big hard currencies, I think that's wrong. Because if we're trying to think in that sort of way, and Pavel, you want to think in that type of methodology, then I would say, then you should probably be buying some Bitcoin, because that's where we'll be heading with that type of thinking. And more than likely, that's where we are.
I think it's just the questions that you're asking.
Actually, Gabriel, you
like-
may not leave, okay, because you're our angel and you have an angel behind you and you're named after an angel. But I'm going to go to Johnny Fry. Hold on, Pavel. Stay here, too. Johnny,
Okay.
these two seminars got mixed together. You're not late. You're good. And it just expanded. But Gabriel has some hands-on background and experience with setting up or working with a lot of Caribbean countries, and not just Caribbean countries, on setting up
central banks around the world.
Yep. And you recognize some faces here. And Pavel, talk with them. We're gonna integrate Johnny into the mix.
Goran, just a few things. There is no such thing that will constantly grow. And people thought it will be Tokyo real estate. It grew until 80s and then collapsed. And so Bitcoin, definitely is a solution for many issues, for a gray market, amazing solution, but not for everything. And US economy now, Chinese economy is the strongest, etc. And if you look at which tools will we use Facebook, we use Google, we use Zoom, we use WeChat, and it's either US or Chinese. You don't have European services in here. They're stuck. And this, not even 2/3 of the world, like 5/6 of the world don't matter in terms of technology, in terms of economy, etc. It's everyday usage. Indeed, like Ukraine has an amazing digital banking, but who cares? Will Gordon open an account in Ukraine and save money here? No, regardless of the tech. It's all about trust. It's not about the tech. And you may be coming with good intentions, but if you come to the wrong government, they won't implement anything for the good of people. Because if they would want to implement something good, they would already had.
They wouldn't be the government.
Banks. It's not easy. It's not hard to implement normal digital banking. It costs like $1 million, and then for the whole country, for such a small one. But there was no desire, because where you have frictions, you have a lot of places for bribes, you have a lot of places for corruption, etc. And there are very few countries in the world who care about citizens. So you may care, but they will not. And if you could just come to them, I'm not saying you're doing bad things.
I have
not at all.
I have to call out two things really quickly. The first one is a blanket statement you keep making is that all governments don't care about their people. And that's a fallacy, because I know without a doubt, for a fact, that governors like Governor Timothy Antoine of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank stood up and was the first governor in the world. Please allow me to finish. Governor Antoine was the first governor in the world that stood up on a platform publicly and supported the notion of a CBDC because of the benefits it would bring his people.
It is great. It is great.
But there was zero ill intention in that. And the second thing I would say is, you show me a bank that you can establish for an entire country for $1 million, I'll get you $1 million in 2 hours.
Okay, I can get you in touch.
Don't challenge.
Who can do that?
No, don't tell you. This is like
we're talking.
This is like a couple fighting it and then falling in love and then having 10 babies.
They can
undersimplifying.
Okay, Rico, we gotta get Johnny in here, or else Johnny's gonna come across the island, come across the Atlantic with his posh accent and kick my ass. So, Johnny.
Well, Gordon, I'm very disappointed you still can't speak English, and you've got that nasty twang. But I suppose I've got to put up with that for a little while. Can I just go back to Pavel? Sorry, we've not met, but I think one of the things that I've just picked up there is. We have an expression in Blighty, and it's called "turkeys don't vote for Christmas." And what you have is governments actually don't understand what CBDs are, but they're worried that they can lose control. But the ironic situation is actually a CBDC can give them more control, because the major lever that they've had to date has been interest rates. But with interest rates at zero, they've lost a way to be able to re-stimulate their economies. And this is one of the big challenges that they're facing, because this new thing's come along, which was heralded by the grey economy, by Ponzi schemes, and Bitcoin gets thrown into that. And we've got to try and undo 10 years of bad PR. The last thing they want is something whereby it's anonymous and grey, because they've all got 10 to 15% of their economy already in the shadow economy. But one of the things which, we can see, and I think what Gabrielle's saying, is actually, if you've got the information in a structured format, not electric money, but digital money, it perversely gives the government more control.
I agree.
Where does that get you, Johnny?
Well, I think the other thing that is worth just bearing in mind is the bigger the old fart I become and the older I become, the more I realize what history can teach you. And as Gordon and I were discussing this last week at another event, nothing ever lasts forever and things evolve. And the only thing that is constant is change. And when it comes to foreign currencies and when it comes to world reserve currencies, the time is up for Uncle Sam. Not because it's doing anything particularly wrong, but simply because over the last 500 years, on average, the median life is about 94 years. So before the dollar, we had pound sterling. Before pound sterling, we had the French franc. Before that, it was the Dutch guilder. And before that, it was the Portuguese escudo. And what we're now facing is this sort of situation where people say, oh my God, what happens if America isn't the world reserve currency? Well, a lot of things which go on in America, and don't get me wrong, I love America. I've got family that live in America, so I'm not anti-American. But a lot of things the Yanks are doing, it isn't to the
Yanks
benefit, to the attention.
Oh,
sorry, Americans. Yanks has always been a term of endearment, not an insult. But
it's just cute. It makes me feel like I'm in a Mark Twain novel.
Well, you possibly
go on.
Well, that's actually, joking apart, there's a lot of Mark Twainism going on in Middle America, and yet you're meant to be leading the world. And yet, from a digital point of view, you are really up the Mississippi without a paddle, and you're losing your edge and you're losing your vitality, and that's just natural. That's natural, and it's brilliant that Asia is now kicking your butt when it comes to the digitization of our economies, and that's to be embraced. And
this is kind of the thing I was going at a little bit with Gabriel, who holds himself up well and keeps everyone at bay. I like it, which is Johnny, I think you and I talked about this, like if the US dollar adopted and adapted all this new central bank CBDC stuff, it might be good in the sense that increases the utility of the dollar. But I think it's the final nail in the coffin for its reserve currency status, because it's just going to become one amongst many. It's going to become a product that everyone's going to compare to some other product, and they're going to go with the product that's attractive that day. Gabriel, I see your head shaking. Just hold on a second.
But
I think it's going to be leaving. I think it can maybe coast another 5 years on its history, maybe. But the moment it becomes a central bank digital currency like every other one, what makes it's all down to design. I think it's a little bit away from the country. And you may have the Marshall Islands competing with the US, because the question is going to be which one is the most broadly adopted, which one's the most useful. And so long as you can quickly change your positions in and out of them quickly, and their consensus is reasonable to believe in, and there's depth and liquidity, what would make the US dollar special at that point? And should it be?
Yeah, but Gordon, as I said to you before, go back to when you created the Fed. Go back to 1860.
When I did?
Yeah, well, that's
Creature from Jekyll Island. That was I was serving coffee in the room.
But there were 8,000 different US dollars. You had 8,000 banks all producing their own variation of the so-called greenback. And I think what you're going to see, the competition isn't necessarily going to come from the Brits, the Chinese, the Germans, the Japanese. It's actually probably going to come
Yanks, Japs, whatever. Okay.
Corporates. It's going to come from corporates. And I think that there is a very, very strong possibility you will see the Amazon coin, the Apple coin, the Tencent coin, the Alipay coin. And because people actually
doesn't that add to my point and not detract to it, that if companies get back in the money printing business, and if they're better designed than the digital dollar, everyone wants to use Libra and not the dollar.
They're all going to go back to a hard currency inevitably that they can benchmark our trade weight against.
What's a hard currency though?
Well, it would be what we would like. Some would like to constitute as the U.S. dollar.
But wait, this is
But
a
the
hard
US
currency?
the US dollars,
Well,
it's fucked.
Do you mean
Look-
asset backed, or do you mean something
Sorry?
else when you say hard?
Well, I mean, it's not. We know the U.S. dollar is not asset backed, but you know, a lot of people like to postulate that the U.S. dollar is going to die and it's going to go away, and People's Bank of China's digital currency is going to kill it, and all these different positions. But the reality of it is, I don't see any of that happening.
So, Gabriel, other than America's Civil War 2.0 and Bugaboo, I don't see the U.S. dollar going away, but I think it will lose its first among no one, first among itself.
I don't unfortunately
status.
don't see that, because America's dollar is backed by an intrinsic value called its military industrial complex.
Yeah, and
anyone-
also America has the
anyone-
largest
this is
capital
1950.
market, actually.
But any country that has tried to move away from the US dollar has got the US coming in and giving them freedom. Okay?
Gabriel, go back to your history books. They said exactly the same about good old Blighty and pound
I'm
sterling.
not saying that empires don't fall. I'm not saying that empires don't
No,
fall.
you are.
But
You are saying it's not going to get replaced.
at this current stage, I don't see the U.S. military getting any weaker, and I don't see a near or a medium term future where
I'm jealous of everyone outside the United States, because we see it getting weaker every single day. We're seeing the chain of command getting threatened. We're seeing people getting COVID. We're seeing that this can't be funded 10 years out. We're seeing being pushed out of South China Sea. We're seeing a lot of stuff that. Pablo, go ahead. But yeah, it's
really.
But
you insist you have problems, yeah.
We're not Ukraine. Not compared to Ukraine. You're in a freaking basket case. No. But I insist we have relative problems. And the relative point I'm speaking with
just like
is
I
the
have
US
a
dollar's
relative
ability to
problem
maintain
with
its sole reserve currency status.
It's like my problem, which restaurant to choose where I will dine, right? So approximately the same.
You think that people make just a choice of their digital currency based on whatever reason. I agree with you on that. I can fundamentally agree with you on that. I think where we differ, Pablo.
Well, who are you talking to? Me or Pavel, by the way?
Pablo. I think where we differ is that he believes in a future where fiat currencies of sovereign nations, in smaller sovereign nations like Ukraine and like mine in Barbados, where they won't matter, and it's only the bigger currencies that will matter. But I think I for some reason I think that won't go away. Not anytime soon. Sovereignty, independence, one's ability to manage their own ecosystem. And
look,
I'm not sure.
you maybe your country didn't experience this, but ours did. When the Soviet Union collapsed, or Russian Empire, then we have like 14 states, and these states were not independent at all. They were fully dependent on Russia, at least still many until now. And it's super hard to separate, super hard. And whatever you do, it's like, you know that in Russia you have free trade of land, but historically Russian politicians opposed Ukraine to pass a bill for free trade of land. It's really funny. It's like a few countries in the world who cannot trade land: the North Korea, like Cuba and Ukraine, and maybe some too, a few others. So it's kind of the same will happen with the new cycle. Like, as we see, CBDC is an amazing tool of control, and it will be good for globalization and for people like in general. But for countries, that will be like another pain in the ass. It's like they just started to deal with Facebook, which can control elections, right? And elect this candidate. Our president was elected because of social media. And the old army, good, bad, or whatever, they were just like, oh, wow, we are not elected anymore somehow. And they started to learn how to use Facebook. And then again, who has more these resources? So I'm just saying that there are a few reasons why this happens. Because first of all, a lot of mind power and money dedicated to solving the next generation problem in countries like China and US. And the second, that like people in countries that are not really whatever in the good conditions, they just fight for power and for money, and that's all they do.
So Pavel, do you think a CBDC is better for your country, Ukraine, as a would you call your country, you would constitute as a developing nation, obviously, but do you see a CBDC better for your government or worse? Because your position is saying it's worse, but I can't see how it would be bad for your people or even you as a citizen.
I'm speaking on behalf of some group, right? Of people who entrepreneurs. For us, it would be great to have a CBDC from China, CBDC from the US, from Switzerland, from Germany. Our own CBDC will be like, okay, we already have it. I have it in my phone. I can do more functions that you do on your phone. So I really have everything. I can pay for anything, and just it doesn't add
that's,
value.
if I can jump in, that's not the same thing. That's electronic money vis-a-vis CBDC. CBDC is money, digital money issued by the central bank. So that is completely different. I mean,
that's right.
I don't wanna,
it's true, but
this is something
this is tricky,
different.
Massimo.
Massimo. Ladies and gentlemen, I unfortunately have to run. I trust. I know that Pavel and the rest of the team are going to give great conversation to this. Thank you for your time so much, everyone. Peace and love.
Talk to you soon.
Okay, well, we're going to catch you again. Irina, your face was like a whole palette of expressions when Pavel was talking about the 14 countries that came out of the Soviet Union.
No, I think my face is like having all sorts of expressions throughout the conversations. I think we all fundamentally agree on several things. First of all, CBDCs is a great control tool over its people, control tool over, the interest rates, control tool of who can be banked, who cannot be banked. Like, for example, Irina is very loud, right? And she's saying all the things we don't like. She's saying, let's just make sure she cannot buy food anymore. That's a great tool of control, right? So we agree on that. We agree that there are billions and billions of people unbanked. In the MENA region, we have 577 million people, and only 14% have bank accounts. Only 14, let that sink in. Only 14% of 577 million people in the MENA region, and we're quite developed. Look, we have oil and gas, right? That's fabulous. Trading for centuries. Only 14% of people have bank accounts, credit cards, etc., etc. In God we trust, but everybody else have to bring cash. That's what we say here in the Middle East. So we have a huge issue with banking the population. So yes, for those millions of people getting a wallet on their phone and becoming banked might be a really, really good and easy way, whether it's an electronic money or digital or crypto. I think the lines now are so blurred, and Pavel wanted to argue against that very loudly. And my point of view is that the lines are so blurred. I'm as an end user, I don't care. Is it crypto? Is it digital? Is it electronic? Or whatever. It's on my phone. I can tap. I've paid for my food. Thank you very much. Now off I go. So I think we all agree on that, and I think we all agree that we do not live in countries where governments have the best interest of their citizens in mind. Yes, they have to keep their jobs. Yes, they have to keep their government employees. And the more frictions there are, the more inefficiencies there are, the more cousins I can employ. I mean, that's fantastic. Look at us. Now we have tenure for life and we have government cushy jobs. That's brilliant. So, and, in some countries, it happens more obviously. I come from Soviet Union, so in the former 15 republics, it happens more obvious. I'm an Australian citizen, so in Australia it happens less so obvious. So it's just the shade of grey, really. But the system is there to protect the participants of the system. And but what I am genuinely believe, and I don't think anybody can persuade me otherwise, we have huge historical sort of evidence, government will use whatever they use to control their population in a way, to suppress. Imagine Trump if he can disconnect every loud Democrat from the banking system. He would have done that right now already. So just imagine what can happen in the Middle Eastern countries, which have less democracies, or in former republics, former Soviet Union republics. People are being killed.
By the way, this is my advocacy for cash reflex, because I think what you're saying is true of any banking system, of any payment provider, of anything. If the powers in charge want to make it so you can't pay your rent, can't support your parents, can't pay the medical bill, anything, it's the moment you have an intermediary that's regulated, whether it's the government itself or a bank or a payment provider, I think that there's a freedom aspect to cash. And
Absolutely. And now with this pandemic, whether it's how much of a pandemic are we having, that's questionable. So with the pandemic, the cash is going away, whether we like it or not. The cash is going away, and we'll have cryptocurrencies, electronic money, or digital currencies, whatever you want to call them. But it will give, at the end of the day, it will give more additional tools of control over the citizens.
Yep.
Gordon, I need to go soon, so I want to a few minutes. I want to ask Massimo, why do you think, I want to see, here's the reason, why do you think the central bank money is much different?
Well,
I also believe it's much different, just want to hear from you.
Yeah, I think an important point that comes along to what Irina was saying is that CBDCs guarantee continued access to central bank money. So in jurisdictions where access to cash is in decline, and this is happening more and more in all the jurisdictions, or let's say more developed countries, but also in some other countries, there is a danger that households and businesses will no longer have access to risk-free central bank money. So in this situation, some central banks consider it as an obligation to provide public access, and that this access could be crucial for confidence in a currency. This is why a CBDC could act like a digital banknote. And as a digital banknote is a completely different from an electronic money tool that you were talking about, because this could fulfill this specific obligation. That's why a CBDC system could act as an additional payment method, improving operating resilience. Because compared to cash, a CBDC system might provide a better means to distribute and use funds in geographically remote locations or during natural disasters. And this is very important for financial inclusion, because whenever there's a situation where there's a natural disaster, or even in a COVID situation, the money that must go right away to the people that need it.
Okay.
How does it go? Just because there is a system of CBDC in place. That's why.
Okay, Massimo, just one thing to comment on that. I understood your point. Look, US, which has a very good system of relationships between people, can use paper checks to send money in COVID times. In other countries,
I can tell you. I can tell you that that hasn't worked in the US as well as in Western countries. People have been waiting for months for the money to come, and they have been unemployed. And this has been a crucial point.
Massimo, so I'm here in the US. There is a delay. There's a delay with a lot of stuff. But I don't know if that's because we don't have a CBDC or just because the government can't get its act together in general.
Yeah, can I just, it's not my point. My point was that in countries where government works, there are already ways to send money, and unbanked people is not the problem of technology, not at all. It's problem of people, of regulations, and etc. And you cannot just plug in the technology and say now everybody will be banked.
Wait,
Second
Pablo,
thing.
pause for a second, because I'm curious. Do you mean it's a cultural issue on behalf of the unbanked? It's a general cultural issue? Like, how specifically do you mean?
No, I mean that the countries that cannot get their shit together don't have any systems, and no CBDC will save them. It's only external guy will come and say, use my CBDC. I am China, I am strong, right? And we will use it. And that's it. And the internal forces will just be fail on that.
If I can jump in, just one thing is about the model of implementation of CBDC, because there is one-tier, two-tier model. One-tier model is crucial because it addresses this specific point, because digital money is to be transferred directly from the central bank via the social security system to a single person, because the social security system holds all the updated information of the people. And because of COVID-19, the money transfers to be done in the US or in other countries to the people who need them, mostly unemployed people.
Yeah, I understand.
Would be done directly via digital currency transfers from the government via social security system to them with CBDCs. That is why you don't need an electronic tool, and also electronic tool is private tool. So you cannot delegate that to a private institution. This is a social issue.
Massimo, you unfortunately, like, I mean another thing. Technology is only a slave of people. It's not master by itself. I can provide you with tons of examples where there are electronic services in place in some countries, including mine, and they just don't work. They just whatever, have the dinner break or have whatever problems, or have this or have that. You cannot turn it on. What I'm saying is that the countries that my example about $1 million banking system is still in place. It's like you can, like, Gordon, you're half German or whatever. So do Germans need certain whatever written rules to work? No, they just have it.
No, because it's imprinted in their genetic code.
Social
and they look
system.
At that.
Yeah. If I try to impose the same order on whatever on people in Moldova, I will fail. There won't be BMW in Moldova anytime soon unless it has German managers.
We're not talking about the nature of the different populations in the world. We are talking about a specific problem. How people who need the money to can have it right away.
Is that not the result of a system?
Problem. It's not a hard problem. It's a very easy problem. The hard problem is how to make all the legal aspects so this system can be turned on.
Issue.
I don't think so.
Let me pause this one second. Rico, I'm gonna call on you, fellow panel leader.
Unfortunately, Gordon, I have to leave. So
that's convenient. Everyone makes their final point, then they go before they can get pushed back on. But
that's always final point.
but the good thing is there's never a final point.
Okay, final point is that central bank in a country that is not strong is not sufficient to do something. The banking system is stronger. There is no one guy who can decide. There are always a bunch of guys who influence each other, etc., etc.
Okay, that's a really interesting
point. That's why, like, in Ukraine, you can use any bank to distribute money. There's no issue. Just people trust certain banks more than the government.
Okay, so probably you got to say for this, is the point you're making that if there's sufficiently strong institutions, you could do CBDC, but when you have sufficiently strong institutions, you don't really need it as much. The countries that don't have really strong institutions could really benefit from CBDC, but because they don't have strong institutions, they have a hard time putting it in place.
It's something that I also imply, but it's the main thing is the issue of trust. I here in Kiev will trust the Chase Bank more than Central Bank of Ukraine. That's it.
Isn't that an institutional question?
It's trust question. So I can trust, my investor and keep my money like in Leon Killer movie, right? So why do you need banks? You trust me. I will never take your money.
There's a famous thing, why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is. Fine, Pablo, you're off the hook now.
That's a very interesting point, actually. So we're talking about blockchain, we're talking about cryptocurrencies, we're talking about trustless solutions, because I don't trust you. That's why we have cryptocurrencies. But at the end of the day, the trust is
between people.
Yeah, the trust makes the decisive point. I would trust Libra more than the CBDC of my useless government of Australia. I would totally use trust Zuck more.
Did you mean that literally, or are you exaggerating for effect?
No, literally. I mean that literally. I would trust Libra to work rather than the useless CBDC.
Okay, well, there's two things. There's to work, and then there's to preserve your privacy. And let me, by the way,
to
work.
Yeah,
that may be true.
Privacy, forget about it.
I have a question just then. Well, Pablo was talking about that. Like, to me, he has a point to make, but because for a country that's gone to bankruptcy or central bank that's bankrupt, regardless of what infrastructure you build for as a CBDC, it's pointless. Yeah, but Gordon, you had a point too, because you don't think US dollar will go away, right? As American. But what if one day USA is bankrupt? One day, I don't know when. What?
Well, again, I'm not.
5 years ago.
Well, okay. So look here, allow me, since I got named here. So look, so long as the U.S. can denominate its debt in its own currency, okay, it's not going to go bankrupt. Okay, in any countries, I don't even know countries technically go bankrupt, but it won't have a balance of payments issue, so long as it's paying its debt, the interest on its debt, and buying its goods abroad with U.S. dollars. Okay, what's obviously happening is that we're printing, that even that term is outdated, more dollars than we're producing in an equivalent economic value. So
imagine the government can just print with just a few clicks.
Right, and by the nature of this thing, it is a curve like this. So in the beginning, it looks all innocent, and then when it builds up a head of steam, it's unstoppable. And we're like Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until someone else punches you in the face. Well, the whole world is actively competing with US and with each other. So you can't get off the carriage, you can't get around off the Ferris wheel of history and ask for a pause. There's no such thing. So to Johnny's point, yes, we had the pound sterling, we've had a lot of things kind of come and go, but we're also at a point where history is moving faster because of the internet and because of COVID and a couple of other things, and time is getting compressed. And I was not arguing for the end of the US dollar. I mean, I think you could have had the Weimar Deutschmark still in place if it wasn't for World War II. All right, but my specific point is, the US dollar is not just first among equals when it comes to reserve currencies. It's first and alone for a decent chunk of time. But I think that's going away, and I think it's going to be maybe a strong reserve currency eventually, but it's not going to be the dominant one. It would certainly never be the sole one. And I don't know if we're ever going to come back to a national currency being the sole one. Even if you take the Chinese yuan, I mean, to the extent that they're suboptimal, this is what I was getting at before, to the extent that this is stopping to become a national power issue, but becoming more of a design issue. Any nation that comes up with a central bank digital currency that compromises on design in order to pursue its own political or economic objective, there may be a payoff to doing that, but all of us have a choice of not using that currency. We're in this competitive marketplace for currencies. And I don't know if the US, once it goes into that field and kind of takes off its clothing and says, evaluate me like you evaluate everyone else, whether it can hold its current position. I'm not saying it's going to go away. I just think it's going to lose its place at the top of the perch.
But I think you make a very interesting point there, Gordon. And what we're seeing is the national boundaries are becoming less and less significant when it comes to a digitized environment. And this whole thing of trust and misinformation, if you, again, go back to the S&P 500 in America, there are only 14 companies that are net cash positive. And apart from T. Rowe Price and Facebook, I don't know the others. So you're not only talking about countries being actually bankrupt, you're actually talking about most corporates are bankrupt, yet people still trust in them.
Well, at least at the end of the day, the corporates are not printing their own money. And at the end of the day, finally, their cash flow needs to cover expenses. And so there is a come to God moment, barring social bailouts, which I'm very nervous about and where that's taking us. We're seeing social bailouts with banks. There's no bankruptcy for banks. It's ironic. There's just restructurings. The reason I'm attracted to Bitcoin and things like it is it's, unfortunately, Gabriel didn't stay on, but when he talks about hard money, US is not hard money. No one is hard money. Hard money would be something that's either tied to a limited physical asset like gold, or something that's mathematically secure like Bitcoin, or mostly secure like Bitcoin.
Gold is money. What we're using now is just currency, right?
I've had that discussion easily 1,000 times. I think words change their meaning over time, and you can argue that the U.S. dollar started off as tokenized gold because it was exchangeable for gold, and then asset. But if every human being was dead, gold would not be currency or money or anything. It's only human understanding that gives these things whatever value they have.
Yes, of course. Yes, of course.
Okay. And so when the perception of full faith and credit of the United States government making the US dollar hard is only so long as full faith and credit means something. Okay. And it takes 100 years to build that up, and it takes 2 seconds to lose it, the way this stuff happens. And I don't know if anything is, some of these may fly, some of these central bank digital currencies or commercial currencies, they might fly technically, but we're always going to have questions about the actors' intentions and whether or not they can change their design later if it suits them. The Snowden question, Facebook would never give out that information. Well, I guess they were, and they were doing it for 10 years. And the Germany also are our ally, and it's not like US is so evil, everyone does it. So I want, to the extent I'm happy with any of this, I want mathematically built in privacy, new rate of creation under control, everything else. And I don't know if any government is going to do that, because that's such a surrendering of sovereign power.
So guys,
I'll throw that to the group. Actually, let me throw that out there. Would any government contemplate giving up the sovereignty that's inherent in a true math-based, autonomous, spread out DLT global currency, or is it just too much of a hit?
Haven't you already seen examples of that in Europe?
Well, that's pooled sovereignty, and it's not going well, from what I can see.
But you said, would any government give up sovereignty?
Well, sorry, surrender, not pool. No one is sharing sovereignty with Bitcoin. And you're right, fine. I'll tweak my language. Okay, I don't mean moving our sovereignty from box number 1 to box number 2, and we both kind of own the boxes. I mean, truly, I don't think there's any government, maybe with the slight exception of China, and that's transient, who has control over Bitcoin. Okay.
Not really, actually. There's no government that has control over Bitcoin. Then
I know. I was semi-ironically saying that, but I guess because of the mining concentration there, you have some kind of argument.
Gordon, I wonder whether perversely the Chinese may actually go back to what Irene's saying. And if you look at the amount of gold that potentially China have, whether they actually turn around and say, we're actually going to underpin our digital currency by 20, 30, 40, 50% gold.
But here's the issue with
that.
At current prices, you will never have enough gold to cover the amount of yuan or dollars or whatever in circulation. Never, right? You'd have to artificially make it lower.
10, 20, 30% of your currency if some of these unconfirmed rumors are correct with the amount of money, amount of gold that the Chinese military hold, and the fact they've not allowed any export of gold now, for about 15 years.
Well, no doubt. Look, the amount they have in gold is the amount they don't have in the dollar. The amount of the gold is the more they have flexibility to kind of make moves towards the independent currency. There's a lot of benefits to them having it, but they can never go for a one-for-one exchange. Like this is just merely, they'll never be able to say this is tokenized gold. At most, they'll be able to say this is backed by gold. Like Libra is potentially backed.
Like Tether.
Yes.
Potentially,
yeah.
Well, Tether claims there's a one-for-one exchange, right?
No, Tether didn't claim it's a one-to-one.
Prove it.
Yeah.
Dunstan, do you mind to share with us the architecture of Chinese way of looking at this whole, assets?
Yeah. So maybe I just start with the Tether thing. Tether allude that they have a one-to-one. But even in their terms and conditions and their architecture, they don't. And even with the bank account, it shows it's not a one-to-one. So
you're breaking my heart.
Yeah.
Ever since I was a small child, I believe that Tether had $1 backing up every Tether.
Yeah, I'm not saying that you know Tether is a scam or whatsoever, but what I'm saying is it's not a one-to-one peg. It's as simple as it is. I mean, if I set up Tether, right, the only way for me to earn from it is either to be a liquidity provider where you know I give out and have interest on it as a loan and so on, or I make sure that it's not a one-to-one peg.
Mhm.
If not, what's the point of creating Tether as a business?
Where do they make their money?
Exactly.
Yeah, correct. So they make their money through that arbitrage. When people assume that it's going to be a one-to-one, but yet if it's going to be a 0.98 to 1, you every printing you start making money.
But amazing how that's gone up from a couple of billion to 15 billion in the last year.
Yeah, correct. Because
it's like the emperor's
because
got no clothes. Everyone wants to believe it's backed, but most people realize it's not, but they keep on putting money into it.
You see, right? They think many of the laymen that are using, because most of the money is actually retail money. Most of the laymen actually believe that Tether is one-to-one back.
Like Gordon.
I mean, Gordon is a layman, but yeah, and Gordon
I'm a
doesn't believe
layman.
in
There you
that.
go.
Yeah. Maybe lame, but not lay.
You're an LA man, not a layman.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
this is too much love. So talk to us about China's plans for CBDC.
So it's the okay. So so there are some things that I would not be sharing in public. So we should better have a private conversation. But the things I'll be sharing will be more on structure. So when China builds the CBDC and when they tried using blockchain, they knew it couldn't work because they tested. It doesn't work. You think the Chinese don't want to make a CBDC on a blockchain? They want it because the amount of transparency that will be given to them, the amount of power that will be given to them, they can just make their yen whatever that's in like underneath underneath the mattress of the people and so on, or those that are laundering and those that are evading taxes and so on. They can make it totally transparent to the government, to the PBOC. Now this is like China's awesome way of getting back financial control even of their people. So why wouldn't Chinese want to use a blockchain? But when they are testing their CBDC, let me ask you, is it a blockchain-based central bank digital currency?
No.
Doubt it.
It's not, because no blockchain architecture right now could support it. It's as simple as it is, not because they don't want it.
Yeah, if I can say something about this point, is that as we know, this is also a way of tracking money flows every time money changes hands. And there is what they call in China a balance between controllable anonymity and anti-money laundering practices, counter-terrorist financing, and also tax issues, online gambling, other electronic criminal activities. So the introduction will be gradual and the impact will be small in the short term, exactly because it's a different cryptocurrency from Libra, which will be used in different countries with a different impact. That is what people do not really understand when they make a comparison with Libra, because it's a completely different animal, and it has a completely different impact in different countries of the world vis-a-vis China. And China has a massive plan to expand and to leverage on the Belt and Road Initiative, because the Chinese have they are the biggest players in international trade, and their point, and I understand it, is why do they have to be paid in dollars? It doesn't make sense for them. Why do they have to submit their revenues from decisions taken in Washington, D.C.? This does not make sense, and that's why they're pushing so hard to introduce the DSAP and also to export it abroad via the Belt and Road Initiative. So it makes perfectly sense. And also because this initiative involves 152 countries in the world, they are so successful. And that is why Donald Trump is resisting so much, because of course he sees that as a threat. But at the same time, sooner or later, this will succeed, in my opinion.
Yeah,
no doubt. Rico, I think we it's been great. I think we gotta sort of wind it down. Would you say? This panel expanded and it morphed.
As
Actually,
expected 2 weeks ago.
Gordon, can I just quickly go back to this thing about?
Sure, please go ahead.
And you said, well, maybe we should all carry cash. You're obviously all familiar with there's a limit to how much cash you can take out of a country at any one time. Yet they don't limit your credit card or debit card. So you want to be careful about what you wish for, because if you go back to cash in countries, sort of backward places like France and Germany, really sort of weird, wacky places, you can't actually spend more than 3,000 euros on a transaction.
I think you were slightly overstating my position, just slightly, just a nudge. But I'm saying that cash does have certain implications, just in general.
But they're already cracked down on that. That's my point. So if you
but before you came on, there was the statement made, I forget who made it, that governments like cash. I was like, I mean, maybe when they want to pay off their bagmen, but in general, not really.
No.
In general, they want to see every single transaction and impose taxes on them.
Yeah.
But and control money laundering and control Iran's nuclear program. It's cash that kind of lets cash and cash equivalents that lets all that good, bad stuff happen. Now, unfortunately, I think we're out of time, and I don't want Julia to kill me, because she might.
One final thing, which people may not have spotted, currently the Chinese have actually started a monopolistic investigation into WeChat Pay and Alipay, because they've got too much control over the movement of payments in China. And if the central bank really wants to see wide-scale adoption, they've actually got to somehow rein back the control that those two companies, in theory, independent companies, because cash isn't the competitor, is actually Alipay and WeChat Pay, with over 1 billion customers between them.
I think like most Chinese political things, it's going to sound like a bunch of dogs fighting each other under a carpet, and we'll know who won depending on who crawls out at the end. And it's not for us to know, unfortunately. All right, guys, I'm going to say thank you for everyone. Irina, thank you for dropping in from the Middle East. You were a later edition, but the best edition. I'll just say that. So there you go.
Everyone, all of you. Thank you for your time. Great meeting some of you.
Yeah, and Massimo, Johnny, Dunstan, co-host Rico, Sergey, I see you. Elizabeth, I see you. We're going to hand the reins back to you and just say thank you for letting us go at length. That was a very interesting conversation. So we all appreciate it.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye.
Okay, bye, guys. Yes, finally, we are going to finalize today's Digital Week Online. It's the first day. Yes. Dunstan, we have you want to add something or not?
Nope, I'm good.
That's good.
Okay, you're good. Okay, that's why I want to say goodbye to all of you once more time. See you tomorrow on the same time.